Hey there. Tonight we'll drift together into a world hushed by mystery, where ancient giants of stone linger beneath the moon, and listen to secrets carried on the wind. Imagine standing in the scented night on a rain-damp hillside in Japan, as low mist sweeps through the trees, blurring the lines between what is myth and what is memory. Across oceans and centuries, from the stone-buried slopes of Hyogo to the hidden valleys of the Andes, a story emerges in the reverberating silence, one touched by water, loss, and quiet wonder. Stay close. There's a startling connection between flood myths in distant lands and massive stones, moved as if by vanished hands. If slow mysteries and gentle discoveries speak to you, settle in and let this journey soothe your curiosity. And let this be a gathering of dreamers. Imagine people everywhere, from bustling city apartments to dark rural bedrooms, coming together for tales by starlight. What time is it for you, and where does your mind find itself tonight? For now, dim the lights, sink deeper into your covers, and let the hush between words guide you deeper. Our path tonight follows the stony footprints left by unknown architects as the world sleeps around us. At the very edge of memory, there are places where legend and geology hold hands. Beneath tangled roots and forest breath in Japan, colossal stones crouch like old wordless guardians. Some lie unbeaten by time, their faces patched with moss, others honor strange balances, wedged in suspension, as if denying gravity's rule. Even before writing bound language into record, rumors of floods and sky-tearing storms circled these sites, passed down as lullabies and warnings by fireside light. It is no mere coincidence that tales of overwhelming waters run like blue veins through the oldest stories here. In Japan, these stories ripple out from ancient texts such as the Kojiki, which whispers of gods unleashing ferocious floods and storms to carve new shapes into the young land. People tell of an age when divine tempests gathered, rage and intention braiding together, and in the chaos valleys were gouged, mountains shouldered upward, and scattered isles were born from the settling tide. In these tales, water is both destroyer and sculptor, forging a landscape to cradle a future civilization. Remarkably, Japan is not alone in recalling such a deluge. Similar motifs surge through the folklore of cultures as far-flung as Sumer and the Americas. The motifs repeat, an age before, lost to water, followed by slow persistence and renewal. Step now to a highland dawn in the Andes, where the silhouette of Ollantaytambo cuts the first faint light. The air is thin, sharply cold. Stone terraces unfurl in bewildering precision down the mountainside, their edges softened by centuries of relentless wind and rain. Amid the terraces lie immense granite blocks, some weighing as much as several elephants, carved and shaped with clean lines and joined so tightly you might not slip a blade of grass between the faces. These stones did not originate from the terraces beneath your feet. They traveled, improbably, across yawning chasms and icy rivers, their source a mountain quarry more than 7 kilometers distant. Pause here. Imagine the effort, rock detachments, grinding sledges, the roar of many hands and voices. The blocks at Ollantaytambo defy all expectation. Their journey cut not merely across distance, but across a landscape scarred by time and elemental fury. Each slab seems to hint at purpose, arrangement, and design lost to us. Yet the story of their motion is written in their sheer impossibility. How did they cross rivers which today run fierce and nearly impassable, especially before any record of wheeled vehicles or metal pulleys? Silence returns. A lonesome bird hovers overhead, its call echoing off the steely faces of ancient walls. There's an energy here, a stillness teetering on the edge of revelation and unknowability. In such places, water is never far from memory. The rivers below, swollen by seasonal floods, must once have surged higher and wilder. Some local legends even recall a time when the stones themselves rode on great waves, carried to their current resting places, not only by human will, but by nature's own upheaval. Left behind in this hush, clues lie scattered, stylized wave carvings on stone, water-worn steps, a pattern of construction that weds architecture to flowing channels. A shadow passes, cloud across sun. Is it only in the forgetting, or is there something encoded in these ancient sites? A kind of universal grammar, repeated from Japan to the Andes, whispering of a vanished epoch shaped by water and monumental ambition. Our path twists again, cracks open, as we return to the mossy stillness beneath Japanese cypress trees. Some stones here stand so precisely balanced that they seem to float, impossible tablets suspended in the hush of morning fog. The silence is so deep you can almost hear ancient voices pause mid-offering. Legends say these stones mark the work of kami, gods or spirits, inspired to reshape the world after storm and deluge. These echoes are not mere coincidence, but form a global pattern: colossal stones, improbable placements, and stories that turn and return to floods. The parallels with the Andean strongholds are uncanny, both landscapes shaped by hands lost to time, both haunted by stories in which the world changed overnight. The evidence remains incomplete, always just out of reach, as if the stones themselves wish to keep their secrets. Each site offers a challenge to our imagination. Are these alignments mere chance, or hints at knowledge washed away in darkness? Even as the wind stirs the surface of a mountain lake, or the rain pools in age-old carvings, the stones hold watch, patient and heavy with unresolved history. Let the silence linger here just a moment longer before we move forward. Not everything old can be explained or possessed or neatly catalogued. Some stories, some structures, are meant to nudge us toward humility in the face of lost time. From the hush among Japanese megaliths to the thunder-haunted highlands of Peru, the world's great stones seem to repeat a single, ancient question. Who were the builders, and what drove them to shape stone and call down mythic waters? Beneath shifting clouds in Hyogo Prefecture stands the enigmatic Ishina-Hoden, sometimes called the floating stone, not for illusion, but the marvel of its improbable poise. Clouds roll overhead, casting unhurried shadows on the hillside at Hyogo Prefecture, where the Ishina-Hoden monolith stands in quiet defiance of both gravity and time. It appears at first as though someone has pressed pause on a colossal stone in midair. A granite behemoth, nearly 6.5 meters long and just as wide, somehow perched with an uncanny sense of composure. Ancient moss creeps along its edges, but the surfaces remain unexpectedly smooth, untouched by centuries of wind or rain. There's a coolness in the air, damp and dense, and the ground below your feet yields with the soft squelch of seepage. Water curls around the monolith's base like a protective veil, obscuring a solitary pillar hidden beneath, the source of saga and speculation alike. Under the shifting sky of Asuka, the Masuda no Iwafune waits, a monolithic enigma shaped from the living bedrock, isolated atop a low hill that once overlooked paddy fields, village roofs, and, long ago, perhaps a once brimming inland sea. Here, the air is laced with moss and the faint scent of rain-soaked earth, as if holding on to 1,000 years of silent inquiry. The rock itself, some 11 meters long, as broad as a fisherman's house, and nearly as tall as the trees that have crept near it over the centuries, seems to both dominate and surrender to its surroundings. Its surface is a study in precision, each groove and rectangular hollow cut as if by invisible artisans pursuing a purpose now lost to the mist of eras. No birds dare roost atop this stone ship. Maybe it is the sharpness of its angles, unsoftened by time, or an unspoken weight in the atmosphere, the usual chorus of nature quieted, replaced by the slow drip of dew slipping down the boulder's sides. One might expect, as at other ancient sites, to find scattered chips where ancient hands worked and cast away rejected fragments. Here, the ground is pristine and undisturbed, as if the boulder emerged whole from the earth, already burdened with mystery. Local stories claim the stone was once a vessel meant for the gods, or as a bridge between the realms of water and sky. Some elders, gathering on a breezy afternoon beneath swaying branches, will recall tales of a vanished people, builders with knowledge surpassing the tools we can now imagine. Their memories are recited with a hush, as if the megalith itself is listening, and the rhythmic echo of water against hollow stone lingers in the mind long after the story's end. In this air, where silence reverberates between granite and grass, even a skeptic must wonder what prompted such formidable effort for a monument whose utility is so utterly obscure. A slow walk around the Masuda no Iwafune reveals further oddities. The carvings appear impossibly symmetrical, the rectangular depressions so smooth and intentional they seem almost modern. Some speculate they mark a calendar, a star map inscribed to placate or summon a force now forgotten, or perhaps serve as a relic of an unfathomable technology. What is absent here is as unsettling as what remains. There is no sign of the process behind the product. Without debris, one might imagine the stone was shaped elsewhere and brought here. But this too defies logic, as if the laws of weight and labor dissolved for a purpose beyond mortal comprehension. Within shouting distance, the landscape is riddled with other such puzzles. To the west lies the Ishinahoden, not quite as massive as the Masuda, nor Iwafune, but equally mysterious in its presence. Here, too, the precision of the cut and the looming scale make modern tools seem laughably inadequate. The stone is huge, nearly 6.5 meters long, and nearly as wide and tall as a small cabin, resting in a hollowness that once channeled water, amplifying the natural silence into something that vibrates in the bones. This sense of haunted precision is not unique to Japan. Across an ocean and an age, at the fortress of Sacsayhuaman near Cusco, Peru, the same chill settles. Here, colossal stones, some so large that their weight alone challenges comprehension, locked together without any mortar. The seams are so tight, a blade of grass cannot slip between them, and local myth tells of ancient giants or people wielding mystical powers, their voices echoing over Andean winds as they marshaled rocks like chess pieces on a cosmic board. Circling back to Japan, stories wind through the hills and low valleys. Folklore in Asuka and around Ishinhoden speaks softly of engineers, priests, or even travelers from distant shores who once imposed their will on earth and stone. In the villages, chapels and family stones stand side by side with the megaliths, yet the gap between them is stark. The ancient monuments whisper of a level of mastery untouched by the careful stacking of more recent generations. As sunlight catches the top edge of the Masuda, no Iwafune, its grooves hold shadow-like ink in ancient script. Hundreds of years after the first stone was shaped, no single story has solidified. Was it a tomb for a forgotten ruler? Did it mark a celestial event, or did it serve as the anchor for a temple erased by catastrophe? The ritual hum of insects fades in this spot, replaced by a slow, audible pulse. The echo of water, real or imagined, lapping at foundations unseen, reminding the curious that the great flood is remembered here too, just as in the far hills of Mesopotamia or the high plateaus of the Andes. A twist in the pattern rises with dusk. Walking the mossy ground after a sudden summer storm, one might notice how the land itself seems to breathe, small tendrils of mist rising from cracks between stones. For a moment, the surface glistens, and the muted grooves of Masuda, no Iwafune, reflect tiny beads of water like messages in a forgotten language. The comparison to other sites comes unbidden. A temple in the jungles of Cambodia, whose walls are buckling beneath roots, submerged ruins off Yonaguni, where steps disappear into deepening blue, or a vast field of stones in the South American highlands. It is not only the precision that links these places, but a sense of endurance, as if each stone is both tethered to the past and drifting, unmoored, towards a horizon shaped by myth and flood. For modern archaeologists, every attempt at explanation ends at the edge of certitude. Theories are tested against silence, against grooves that lead nowhere, and hollows whose function resists naming. Each monument, whether shaped by living hands or mysterious forces, carries the scent of unresolved questions, a persistent echo from an era when the boundaries of the possible were wider than we believe. As the last light drains from the sky above Asuka, the Masuda, no Iwafune, seems to recede even further from the present, its shadow stretching like the memory of a vanished sea. Here, history and myth remain fused in one enduring riddle, and the reverberating silence is broken only by a passing breeze and the distant sound of water, hinting that there are still depths yet to be charted. In the earliest pages of Japanese myth, the line between mortal and divine blurs. A time when sovereigns commanded storms and celestial visitors imparted knowledge of medicine and the stars. A soft hush lays over the ancient stones, scattered along Japan's coastal terraces, the sea whispering in patient rhythm against weathered rock. Salt hangs in the air, mingling with the scent of rain-soaked earth. The ruins at Yonaguni are half swallowed by turquoise tides, slabs jutting from the ocean floor as if cut and placed by hands unseen. Above the waterline, moss creeps along faultless edges and geometric terraces, their silent arrangement suggesting a meaning just beyond reach. It is among these enigmatic forms that the oldest myths of the archipelago begin to stir, their resonance felt not in written record, but in the stones themselves. Long before written memory, so the stories say, the land of Japan was shaped not only by churning elements, but by beings whose powers transcended simple human craft. The Kojiki, Japan's oldest chronicle, preserves the echo of an age when gods walked the land. These were not distant figures, but vital presences, sovereigns who molded river valleys or flattened mountain peaks, who commanded storms to uproot old settlements or foster new beginnings. With the flick of a divine staff, a coastline might be remade, a fertile plain reclaimed from the hungry sea. Even today, in remote villages shrouded by mist, elders speak softly of gorges gouged by angry deities, myth and landscape bound together, inseparable as water and stone. Legends tell more than stories of punishment. They carry memories of knowledge bestowed, medicine and agriculture introduced by strangers who never quite belonged. In the tail end of a storm, a vessel would arrive, a curious craft, sometimes depicted as round and gleaming, bearing visitors with features unfamiliar and wisdom alien to the local ways. These figures, sometimes called wise teachers, brought with them glimpses of the stars and the logic of the seasons. Local tales recount how they taught complex methods to plant and harvest, described ways to read the skies, or offered healing unseen before. Yet the teachers' origins would fade into the mists of time, their identities slipping into myth as quickly as they appeared. Paths wind from these stories to the land itself. We see the enduring mark of ancient ingenuity on the Japanese landscape, a canal edge impossibly straight, a stone outcrop that bears the scars of splitting tools long vanished. In the shadow of Mount Kaimon, upright stones stand as mute witnesses, their silent presence haunting rice paddies at dawn. The air thrums with the tension of hidden significance, the sensation that some puzzle waits to be deciphered. But as with all tales of greatness, catastrophe follows close behind. The Kojiki's verses speak not only of gods bestowing order, but wielding destruction. Flood myths ripple through the archipelago, at once local and strangely universal. Islands swallowed, kingdoms washed clean, civilization itself rent from history in the unrelenting grasp of water. One motif persists, the sudden arrival of walls of water, a deluge that ends an age of order and ushers in silence. In some stories, these are judgments cast by resentful deities. In others, they serve as a cosmic renewal, meant to clear the field for life to begin again. The silence following these calamities lingers, echoing in the cool spaces between standing stones and the restless lap of waves against buried ruins. Along the southern coast, where myth is never far from lived experience, memories of the Great Flood persist in folk song and festival. Stories emerge of submerged villages, their rooftops seen by fishermen in the uneasy blue of dawn. Children are taught to beware the sea's sudden temperament, lest they vanish as the old towns did, drawn into the depths with secrets left untold. The motif finds kin beyond Japan. Tales from Peru's highlands tell of relentless waters and texts from ancient Mesopotamia describe a world scoured clean by flood, survivors clinging to wisdom and hope amidst devastation. Pattern interrupt. Yet, as investigators stand among the ancient tough stones and peer into the abyssal waters, a disquiet grows. The stones themselves, with their impossibly tight joins and precise angles, evoke echoes of engineering seen far beyond the Japanese shores. Silent monoliths of Sacsayhuaman set on Andean ridges, or the Cyclopean walls that guard forgotten islands elsewhere in the Pacific. How could civilizations separated by oceans and millennia achieve such similar feats? The question lingers, carried on the salt-laden wind, impossible to dismiss. A slow walk along the ruined terraces gives pause. Underfoot, patterns in the bedrock emerge, a half-buried channel whose smoothness defies erosion. A cluster of stones aligned just so with the solstice sun. The hush here is sacred, sound muffled by the weight of unseen histories. Some believe these alignments bespeak a lost science, preserved not through written script, but through geometry and stone. The viewer can almost imagine hands at work, measuring, lifting, shaping with the surety that belongs to an age before textbook history began. Japanese flood myths are not mere curiosities. They form part of an astonishing chorus of legends found across the planet. From the Andes, where the stones of Sacsayhuaman fit so tightly that centuries of rain have failed to split their seams, to the ancient tales recorded on cuneiform tablets near the Tigris, the story is much the same. A moment came when water unmade the world, forcing the few survivors to carry forward what they could. It is tempting, standing among these ruins shrouded in mist, to wonder whether the line between myth and memory is thinner than we care to admit. Geologists note that between 12,000 and 8,000 years ago, at the very end of the last ice age, the world did indeed change. Sea levels surged, coastlines drowned, and great stoneworks, once higher and drier, became battered and isolated by brine. In that ancient, echoing silence, entire lifeways may have vanished, preserved only in the reverberating hush of abandoned stonework and the slow, persistent voice of the sea. Somewhere inland, at a festival echoing the old New Year rites, lanterns float on the rivers while incense drifts in cool night air. A storyteller speaks of wise visitors who taught the ancestors to read the stars, urged them to build with care against the coming storm. They gave us knowledge, she murmurs, and then they vanished with the flood. The villagers listen, struck not by fear, but by the serene sense that something vital was lost, yet somehow still present, woven into the pulse of wind and tide. As evening deepens, the mystery endures. Did an age of brilliance truly blossom and fade before the world as we know it began? Or do the stones merely reflect the dreams and fears of those who survived, reconstructing a golden past on which to hang the mysteries of civilization? The open sea stirs restlessly. In the lapping of water against unmoving blocks, in the subtle geometry that links Japan's sunken masonry to the heights of distant Sacsayhuaman, a thread of connection seems to glimmer, and, for one breathless moment, the silence feels like it might reveal an answer, if only you listen deeply enough. As the Japanese stones yield up their geometries, a subtle alignment emerges with distant ruins, polygonal lines reminiscent of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, or the masterful joinery of ancient Europe. The open loop persists. What ancient memory bridges continents, linking lost teachers, flood myths, and these monumental stones? In the waking quiet of a Japanese dawn, light slants over the carved face of Masuda. No Iwafune. The megalith sits in its clearing, immense and unmoved, yet shaped so precisely that its lines seem almost deliberate, geometries too neatly framed to be entirely claimed by natural accident. Wind stirs tall grass around its base. Somewhere close by, water finds its level in a stony trough, and the faintest whisper of footsteps disappears into the mist. In this hush, the monument waits, holding more than just the weight of granite on its shoulders. Slow steps reveal the symmetrical grooves etched along its flanks, and the broad rectangular hollows that defy easy explanation. There is an underlying intention here, a method that seems methodical, almost mathematical, stretching the imagination beyond mere religious monument or idle whim. As sunlight shifts and the air grows warmer, the stone's crisp lines catch the eye, shapes oddly familiar for those who have wandered far enough. Because there is something quietly shocking about these Japanese megaliths, their geometry conjures a memory of stonework found half a world away, where the highlands of Peru meet the clouds, and where Sacsayhuaman sprawls with walls that bend and lock as if poured molten, then cooled by the Andes wind. On all axes, the joins so exact that a slip of paper would not survive between them. This is no clumsy effort, nor an accidental convergence. It is as if the minds that worked these stones, separated by thousands of miles and secrets of language, somehow heard and answered the same silent riddle. Here by Masuda, no Iwafune, the silence presses on, a hollow, resonant hush interrupted only by crows calling overhead. The motif repeats, unimaginable weight tamed by exacting hands, connecting distant points across the globe. In the Andes, those polygonal blocks at Sacsayhuaman fit together with up to 12 separate edges, every curve and angle calculated so each stone braces its neighbors, immune to centuries of earthquakes and the forgetting of their original purpose. The precision is intimidating, and as one moves fingertips along the carved granite here in Japan, there is a sense that the stones themselves remember something unspoken, an order inscribed not in text, but geometry. A pale morning, then, becomes a day of faint revelations. The air tastes of damp earth. In this moment, the patterns emerge, the same polygonal artistry woven into the old stones of the Mediterranean, patterns from the castles of Ireland to the lost Cyclopean walls along the Turkish highlands. Each region holds its variant, different faiths, climates, and resultant mythologies, yet always this arcane discipline in rendering the impossible sensible. Technical choices hint at a language that did not travel by script, but by craft. Was this the spark of parallel invention? The answering of similar needs with similar tools? Or is it the impression of a shared legacy, a subtle echo crossing millennia and rising again wherever the earth offered up the right kind of stone? In Japan, local legend records ancient societies with architects tuned to the movement of the heavens and physicians conversant with secrets of the body and soil. Elders speak in slow voices of people almost vanished, who read the stars and measured seasons, who raised not just megaliths, but a world intertwined with medicine and agriculture. The old stories persist in granite and in the soft patter of rain on moss. Between these cultural echoes, something deeper stirs. Perhaps a forgotten script, more foundational than words. A tradition of building that mapped the world with stone rather than ink. A sudden gust lifts loose leaves and, for an instant, the low sun gleams off a groove in the stone. For all its age, Masuda. No Iwafune's surfaces are sharply defined. The cuts and indentations unapologetically straight. The appearance is architectural, almost modern in its symmetry. Yet how and why it was rendered so remains unclear. Local explanations struggle. Some suggest ritual altars or burial markers, but few agree on the purpose, and none can reconstruct the full method. Further away, removed by tens of thousands of kilometers and deep ocean, Sacsayhuaman's stones present their own enigma. The massive blocks, some as heavy as a modern train car, fit each other so tightly that centuries of seismic shudder have yet to dislodge them. Observers pause, tracing fingers along zigzag seams, imagining the hands that could have lifted, carved, and nested boulders as if they were nothing more than pieces of an immense tactile puzzle. Here, too, speculation runs rampant. Ramps, levers, fields of laborers or forgotten tools of lost metallurgy. But none of these fully explain how the work was actually done. A voice from the present interrupts, the measured sureness of an archaeologist at the foot of Ishinohoden, another Japanese anomaly. He numbers the similarities, the scale, the finish, the odd, precise cuts. It is, he says, a pattern, a whisper of something global. The scene shifts, the mist thickens, and for a heartbeat, the stones themselves almost seem to nod in agreement with his assessment. If one begins to chase these patterns, the trail lengthens into constellations of stone. The wall of the 6 monoliths looms from a South American valley, its 6 granite giants standing like sentinels. Each block is placed atop its base, with a delicacy that makes the whole construction appear impossible to recreate today. Rain beads off their flanks, and the air resounds with the echoing hush that settles over such places, forbidding yet inviting. What does it mean that these patterns persist, not just in Japan and Peru, but everywhere old stone rises on the land, swirling from the depths of myth and the uncertainty of early memory? The evidence comes layered. There are always more stories, more sites, cyclopean walls in ancient Europe, the underwater geometry of enigmatic ruins off the coast of Yonaguni, and the quiet symmetry found among the standing stones of England's moors. With every site, a new angle, a new connection, and a new failure to fully explain their origin and intent. The question forms, quietly at first, then with increasing urgency. Are these scattered marvels the footprint of genius that emerged independently across different cultures? Or are they the long, faded echoes of a civilization, or network of civilizations, erased by the surging violence of water and time? In legend after legend, from Plato's drowned Atlantis to the Japanese tales of a flood-cleansed world, a cataclysmic deluge marks the close of the old order and the rise of ours. The reverberating silence is punctuated by the sound of water lapping at broken walls, a motif of memory and loss. A pattern interrupted. Under a broad Japanese sky, a line from a local myth slips into the present, speaking of stars that once mapped the path for builders, and of secrets buried deep by ancient floods. The sensory hush remains, but now, beneath its surface, tension gathers. Each observation is a fragment, and each stone is an anchor, holding down stories that might, or might not, converge into a deeper truth. What links a rain-soaked monolith in Japan with the cold granite giants of South America? A solitary answer never shows itself. Instead, there is always the next sight, another unresolved join, another echo. The slow build of realization yields not a solution, but an expanding sense of scale. Taken together, these stones suggest either a global memory haunted by its own forgetting, or distant whispers that still wait in the quiet for discovery. On the Andean heights above Cusco broods the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, its colossal walls tracing undulations like a petrified wave. The first hint of Sacsayhuaman emerges on the wind as dawn burns away the mist that veils the hills above Cusco. There, just where the mountains cradle the terraced city, these walls rise from the earth, as if mountain itself has been coaxed upward, cut and tamed to a silent geometry. At this hour, frost sharpens every edge. Boots crunch softly through dew as the figure of a lone traveller approaches, dwarfed by stones whose measure mocks all ordinary scale. Each block is massive, some the weight of a locomotive, others nearly 3 times more formidable, and yet each is locked in perfect contact with its neighbour. The contact so tight that a blade of grass could sleep for centuries between them and never see daylight again. The walls undulate in a gentle zigzag, a petrified wave, frozen at the shore of time. The breeze whistles against their flanks, a rush of air broken into eddies by the rigid, interlocked forms. No mortar holds these giants together. Instead, the stones themselves seem to be listening, aware, pressed so close that their mutual gravity might keep the fortress rooted to the mountainside forever. Locals say the stones are alive in another sense. On cold Andean evenings, families gather around candles in the city below, repeating age-old stories passed down as quietly as footprints in the dark. Giants, they claim, once roamed these heights. Others speak of men who chanted words now lost, making stones as light as wool to float up from the valley floor. Still others point to the wild precision of the fit, 12 sides to a single block, as if the builders had wrung a logic from the living rock that no one else may know. An archaeologist kneels by a joint and draws a finger along the seam. Even after centuries of wind and rain, it is seamless, neither growth nor root-finding purchase. She glances up at the sheer size involved, a humbling realization that each stone, some well over 200 tons, would need to be lifted and moved into place without modern machinery. The questions begin to tangle. How did they plan this, with no writing left behind? Why such complexity, when rectangular blocks or even stacked dry stone would have sufficed for defense? The silence of the stones answers nothing. Time stretches in the thin air. The traveller, moving slowly along the rampart, follows deep grooves and weathered marks across the surfaces. Sometimes there are odd indentations, sharp and rectangular, cut into faces that would never show in the final wall. Above, in the rarefied sky, clouds drift by, the only witnesses to whatever organized force, human or not, laid these stones so many generations ago. Then, as if peeling back a layer of the world, the eyes slide along a series of carvings at the fortress's edge. They are subtle, barely visible unless the sun hits low, a meandering spiral, geometric yet organic, recalling motifs found in faraway lands. Stories murmur within the cracks. Elsewhere in the highlands, not far from here, another set of cyclopean stones stands in clusters, facing east as if watching for something yet to come. Halfway across the globe, beneath the pines of Japan, another kind of riddle hides in the moss. A single monolith, Masuda no Iwafune, dwarfs those who find it. Its flanks are smooth, the surface carved with symmetrical grooves and rectangular hollows almost too neat for ancient iron tools. Birds flit in the hush above the stone, calling through shadows that have not stirred in millennia. Local stories here, too, name otherworldly architects, gods or beings descended for a brief purpose, leaving behind a silent challenge for later ages. The implications draw a tangled braid across continents. In Peru, immense stones fit with deliberate oddity, each face a mystery of angles. In Japan, a different but equally calculated monument presents its own stubborn secrets, carved with purpose, but divorced from any context we might expect. A symmetry that resists mere function. These parallels are subtle but persistent, and in both places myth and memory swirl, promising but rarely yielding answers. Is there a buried chord, a global rhythm of stonework that once spanned the world before the tides rose? Whispers linger among the ruins. Some researchers, tracing similarities from Peru to Japan to the Mediterranean, suggest a vast interconnected culture that predates even our oldest stories. They point to the shared insistence on megalith, gigantic, geometric, precise, arrived at by peoples separated by oceans, yet convergent in intention. Others urge caution, noting the deep temptation of pattern finding where only the echoes of human effort remain. Still, the motifs repeat. Heavy stones, seamless joints, inexplicable grooves, and the ever-present thread of flood that runs through every mythic tapestry. There is a peculiarity here, both visceral and unsettling. The reverberating silence along Sacsayhuaman's walls, the slow echo of water against ancient, half-buried stones, creates a sense of something heard and then lost. Time itself seems arrested. The site, wrapped in Andean chill, gives little away. It lets the visitor feel the same awe that likely gripped the first builders or the first awe-struck witnesses so long ago. As the morning matures, sunlight pours into the hollow of the fortress, giving the limestone a passing warmth. Fragments of pottery lie in shadowed corners. The air is sharp and clean, rattling with 1,000 unspoken questions. Every 40 feet or so, the wall dips and rises again, as if tracing some internal geometry long forgotten. Specialists who have measured the stones find not just 12 sides here or there, but a recurrence of the same impossible close fit, repeated across dozens of blocks. What drove this obsession? Fear, knowledge, ritual, or memory? The evidence does not resolve into a simple answer. Instead, it accumulates, each piece connecting and then slipping from the grasp. At the edge of the fortress, one stone stands slightly apart, etched with fine grooves. It almost seems to beckon. Is it a marker left for future generations, or simply the remnant of a vanished technology? Step back, and the pattern intensifies. Around the world, other forgotten strongholds bear resonances with Saksai Huaman, Orkney's Brochs, the Cyclopean walls of the Mediterranean, the enigmatic Yonaguni monument beneath the waters of Japan. Each exhibits an uncanny familiarity, monumentality, precision, the feeling that their origin stories hover just beyond the reach of ordinary history. To those who walk here in the silent chill, Saksai Huaman offers little except wonder. The colossal stones, shaped and set in an age before the written word or remembered name, remain mute. But listen closely in the hush between wind gusts, in the cool shadow of a perfectly fitted seam. 1,000 forgotten voices seem to echo. Something immense passed this way, and sprang a question that winds its way beneath the surface of every world. Flood myth, every legend of giants and vanished knowledge. The answer, if it comes, may arrive not in a lightning stroke, but as slow revelation. One stone, one whisper, connected across continents. Not far from here, tucked deeper into the Peruvian mountains, another marvel waits. Following ancient tracks through Peru's sacred valley, one finds the story of Ollantaytambo. 6 massive granite blocks rising with uncanny symmetry, the wall of the 6 monoliths. Dawn settles gently on Peru's sacred valley, painting the coarse hair of wild grasses silver and gold. Low clouds unwind over the terraced hills, shrouding peaks that have watched centuries of footsteps echo along stone cuts older than memory. Beneath a chill that tastes of granite and old legends, Ollantaytambo waits, more presence than ruin, a riddle in the mountain's own language. At its core looms the wall of the 6 monoliths, a barrier of enormous granite shoulders arranged in silent parade. The air at this hour feels charged, the kind of silence that hums beneath birdsong, promising stories half given up to wind or stolen by time's passing. 6 stones, notched with precision and set in near-perfect alignment, rise as if pressed from the Andean heart by a will lost to history. Their pinkish surfaces wear the scars of tools and weather. Yet each monolith, twice the height of a tall man and many times the weight of a truck, stands unmoved side by side, dividing the world into those who wonder and those who claim to know. From this vantage, a viewer can trace the story further upslope, past the labyrinth of terraces, and up toward the gash in the distant hills, the Chachicata quarry, where geologists have tracked the origin of the stone. It lies over 7 kilometers away, across gorges and riverbanks slick with mist, and reaching it means advancing over a splintered landscape tangled by cliffs and swift currents. The mind leaps. What scheme, what engine or ingenuity could have encouraged these megaliths to move, not inch by inch across smooth land, but to cross a domain, as wild then as it is now? Some imagine sleds groaning beneath rock, fields of workers whipped into unity. Yet the pathways themselves climb sharp enough to challenge even modern equipment. What remains, if not answers, are questions cast in the chill white of early morning. Above the wall, The Andean air ripples with tales. Locals speak in a hush, as if afraid to disturb the builder's rest, of craftsmen who moved stone as easily as men now lift branches. Other stories thread through Quechua memory, whispering of wise architects whose knowledge came either from mythic time or travelers with eyes reflecting oceans, strangers who vanished before they could teach all they knew. The stones record nothing of this, but their mute defiance to simple explanation breathes through cracks and impossible joins. Set among the surroundings, the wall feels self-aware, almost as if it had been erected not just for strength, but as a monument to enigma itself. Each block suggests a perfection aspiring beyond utility, as though to make a point not lost on the air. Sometimes wonder itself is the only message worth leaving behind. Around Ollantaytambo, other stones echo the mystery. Lower along the valley, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman curls in its own serpentine silhouette. There, immense blocks interlock with mind-bending precision, so tightly, it is said, that not even a breezy slip of paper could stow between their edges. The synchronicity of technique and ambition between these sites defies easy chronology. Archaeologists speculate on slow, deliberate chiseling, glacial progress over generations. Even so, the sheer scope and care inscribed in every joint hint at a hand guided by purpose, not altogether clear now, something hovering at the edge of what is knowable and what is simply felt. But while the Andean sunlight glances off a monument to hush and labor, halfway around the world, under a sky of shifting slate clouds, a separate riddle awaits in Japan. In Nara Prefecture, near the modern village of Asuka, an outcropping juts from a wooded rise. Locals call it Masuda, no Iwafune, the rock ship of Masuda. Yet this is no vessel, and it is not meant for voyage, at least in any way a sailor would recognize. The megalith is shaped like an oblong hull, its sides cut with geometric precision, 2 square holes boring straight through its upper face. The sheer mass and spectral symmetry draw attention, but no legend truly explains its carving or its intent. Some say it's a tomb, abandoned, unfinished, a ritual pedestal, or a coded calendar in stone. On misty mornings, the structure feels less like a monument and more like a fossil of an idea, as though the effort to shape it was interrupted by upheaval, perhaps a flood or a cultural disappearance. Around its moss-edged base, the silence feels different, deeper, less a void and more a gathering. The echo of water that may once have lapped at its feet, or voices rising from stories now silent. The ship motif returns in the village tales of inventors who came from distant lands, their wisdom etched in unfamiliar methods, or of visitors who brought knowledge from realms. The sea keeps secret, but the rock pauses, holding its silence in the faded daylight, casting long shadows that only grow thicker as the sun retreats. Here, the pattern interrupts, and shapes begin to whisper to each other across the world. Consider the synchrony, an impossible wall in the Andes, a mock ship moored on an eastern hill, both respectively hemmed by rumor and physical absurdity. Centuries apart, surrounded by myths of wise strangers who crossed great divides, oceans, skies, epochs. The cycle of ancient stonework is not just a matter of brute engineering. It emerges as a motif, elaborate and unresolved, looping through time like a melody that finishes without resolution. If the world's oldest flood legends spoke of destruction and survival, they also murmured about civilizations that found ways to outwit disaster, if only for a moment, anchoring their genius in stone as a shield against forgetting. The reverberating silence, its motif braided through each site, hangs thick between the blocks of Ollantaytambo as it does among the moss-lined flanks of Masuda no Iwafune. Water kiss, stones or winds whisper as daylight wanes, hinting at catastrophes and migrations of secrets submerged beneath silt or ocean, waiting for revelation. Was this knowledge truly lost to torrents, or merely set aside, sleeping in sight of those who listen? The air presses with the possibility that hints and echoes link these megaliths across continents. The memory of some world-shaking event, whether cast down in myth or preserved in geology, rippled out and left its print not just on legend, but in the sheer improbability of these works. And so, the journey remains open, each chiseled face and seamless join another verse in an unfinished ballad. The stones withhold more than they offer, yet in quietly enduring, they keep tugging at the threads of historical certainty. As twilight cools the valley, or night spills over old forests in Nara, one cannot help but sense a secret waiting, not yet stirred to wakefulness, beyond the reach of map and memory. Beneath churning waves lie submerged witnesses, the remains of ancient walls and forgotten architecture where the sea now whispers. Off the coast of Okinawa, rough-hewn blocks rise from the seabed, edges softened by the restless caress of salt water. Every ripple of light across these massive forms suggests architecture, intention, and, most provocatively, a lost civilization swallowed by the sea. Here, silence reverberates deeper than in any ruined temple on land. The waters themselves seem to hush visitors, pressing secrets into the cold embrace of stone. Near Yonaguni, divers descend through clear water, trailing bubbles like a string of forgotten prayers. They pass fish gliding through corridors that might have once been stairways. With each kick, the order in the arrangement becomes harder to dismiss. It is not the randomness of collapse or the play of tides. Rather, terraces step down as if made for feet no longer present. Angular walls stretch off into the gloom, their alignments disturbingly straight. The ocean's endless pulse echoes against these stones, a resonance almost musical, but utterly mute. Further east, on the wind-swept headlands of Japan, Ishinohoden stands in silent defiance of both time and the elements. This single megalith, carved from granite, appears to float as if balanced by an ancient magician's hand. A shallow pool gathers at its base, glassy and cold. Locals whisper legends of celestial descent and gods attending ceremonies among the stones. Even in daylight, the air here feels charged, heavy with the weight of what cannot be named. Moss clings to every crevice, drawing out the edges in velvet green, a velvet of centuries, gently obscuring the human hand that sculpted the impossible. Thousands of miles away in South America, high on the Andean plateau, stonemasons ages ago pressed their mark into the earth. At Sacsayhuaman, the walls rise in massive, interlocked tiers, gigantic limestone boulders locked together in a puzzle more confounding than any myth. Each block fits so precisely that not even a blade of grass can slip between. The stone faces are polished smooth, yet weathered by wind and rain, until their ancient fingerprints all but fade. From above, the wall's zigzag pattern snakes across the hillside, stubborn against time. In the chill morning, silence lingers in the shadowed recesses, a sound broken only by the distant call of a bird wheeling over the valley, or by the quiet awe of those who walk there now. Archaeologists and mythmakers both have scoured these ruins for clues. What catastrophe could have torn whole cities from the embrace of soil, hurling them beneath waves? What impulse of survival, of memory, caused humanity to inscribe so many tales of flood and ruin into clay, into stone, into timeless story? The Epic of Gilgamesh unspools one such record. A flood sent by unseen powers to sweep away all but a chosen handful. Patterns echo between continents. Ancient voices recall a time when boundaries between sea and land, man and God, were less certain. The stones remain where the storytellers have faded, steadfast in their muteness. Beneath the glinting water at Yonaguni, at the base of Sacsayhuaman's walls, and among the mossy curves of Ishinohodin, a sensory motif emerges. It is the echo of water, sometimes flowing in rivulets through ruined steppes, sometimes surging in silent waves overhead. Touch a submerged stone, and you feel the chill not only of depth, but of the ages that have passed, each one laying a hush thicker than silt. The air above ground structures holds a similar weight, the quiet born of abandonment, of civilizations upended by something more massive than mere decay. Suddenly, a pattern emerges. The cut of the stone in Japan is eerily akin to techniques found thousands of miles away. At some Japanese megalithic sites, the immense granite is worked, not hacked, shaped into forms that spark memories of monumental projects elsewhere. The same stubborn angles and abrupt verticality can be glimpsed in far-off Peru. Though separated by continents and oceans, these stones seem as if they belong to a shared conversation, a dialogue in lost skills and untranslatable intentions. Pause there, in the imagined hush of a sunken plaza or on a windswept Andean promontory. Consider a world not static, but in violent flux. Whole landscapes could shift, islands collapse or rise anew. Sea levels leap in abrupt surges. Human ingenuity, whether in the mountains or on island coasts, is tested by cycles of water, years of plenty, then the sudden, catastrophic deluge. Almost overnight, temples might be drowned, memory scattered among survivors left to start again on distant, safer ground. Across cultures, mythology preserves what architecture alone cannot. Carvings of serpents and waves, myths of gods convening to decide the fate of humankind. These stories, sung and retold while rocks eroded and coastlines faded, link the collapse to something bigger than mere bad luck. They build not just explanations, but warnings, a sense that the motions of stone and water, ruin and survival, are part of an older, deeper cycle, still unfolding. In these parallels, a new mystery takes shape. How did such similar stoneworking, the recurrence of megalithic motifs, and the flood itself all arise in scattered places? Is this common cause, the long arm of nature repeating itself? Or does some submerged current connect these ruins, a lost knowledge or memory, resurfacing only in the shared cadence of myth and megalith? Time grinds slowly, but evidence accumulates. Along the seabeds and in mountains, stray tools, half-hewn blocks, strange alignments remain. Divers brush sediment from a submerged carving, uncertain if it marks a civilization, a ritual, or a chance alignment. Meanwhile, on shore, rain sketches its own lines over the stones each day, drawing imaginations back to an era when catastrophe and creativity were locked in struggle. It is the soundscape that lingers, the slap of water on old stone, the hush that follows the telling of a dangerous memory. This reverberating quiet blurs continents and centuries. Where stones lie hidden beneath churning tides or loom above forgotten valleys, each carries its own unspoken question, a riddle unanswered that compels explorers to keep searching. Across the continents, the memory of a great flood endures, etched into myth no less indelibly than into the silted layers of the earth, utterly mute. At the world's edge, the ancient stone lingers, altars abandoned, lines weathered by silence and time. Ishinohorden, a granite giant so primeval in its presence that even those who come prepared for its size pause, momentarily hushed. The stone's vast weight, 500 tons by most estimates, dwarfs the modern landscape, an anchor holding down centuries of rumor and speculation. Here the breath is cool and carries the metallic trace of distant rainfall, as if water remembers its past across these ridges. Yet Ishinohorden is not alone. The world holds its breath around other colossi, each veiled by the uncertain memory of floodwaters. For thousands of miles, distant voices recall the same deluge. Gilgamesh's tale, the original narrative of apocalypse, a city's fate decided by divine conflict and the rise of unstoppable flood. Thousands of years later, fragments of these legends still echo in riverbank villages, as children listen by lamplight to the thunderous undoing of old worlds. Half a world away, Chinese legends, written with the brush's delicate stroke, describe catastrophic floods, waters swallowing entire valleys, famines and emperors locked in battle against rivers that reshaped the earth. In these tellings, it is not just a disaster, but a moment of renewal, as the chaos of the flood forges something new from the drowned landscapes. Monsoon mist still clings to those low plains, stirring an ancient unease at the memory of all that was swept away. Out in the arid heart of Australia, under the immense sky and the slow unscrolling of stars, Aboriginal elders retell stories of the great flood that once crept in from the sea, dividing families, carving new coastlines, and leaving creation's raw marks upon sacred ground. Many of these stories chart a time 8,000 to 12,000 years before present, layers of memory that overlap perfectly with the retreat of Ice Age glaciers and the surge of seas that would have washed across entire continents. What becomes clear is that the myth of the flood is not provincial nor isolated. It is a resonance, one that ripples across civilizations separated by vast distances and epochs, from ancient Sumer to the banks of the Yangtze, from the dream time of Australia to Andean plateaus. It is as if the planet itself bears the scar of water, and cultures record the wound as story, as warning. Layers of silt and shells found in places far from any sea whisper of ancient coastlines lost. The silence that hangs over these ruins, scattered blocks at Tiwanaku, the stepped platforms of a forgotten Asian kingdom, vibrates not with human voices, but with the heavy echo of water's departure. In moments like this, a breeze can cut across empty plazas, flickering like the memory of a wave retreating between the stones. For countless years, generations have puzzled over these scattered giants. Who placed them? What knowledge did their architects lose to waves and silt and the slow obliteration of history? A new intensity breaks through the calm, as investigators notice patterns repeating in unlikely places. The technical precision of the Ishino-Hoden monolith, with its carved basin, seems to rhyme with underwater megaliths off the coast of Japan and mysterious stone platforms on distant continents. Their origins remain opaque, left in situ with no trace of tool marks from known periods, and no inscription but the silence of abandonment. We move to another scene, sudden, on the grass-carpeted slopes of Asuka in Nara Prefecture. A vast ship of stone emerges from the hillside, Masuda no Iwafune. Ponderous and ship-shaped, it rests atop a small plateau, as if caught mid-voyage, an unfinished intention of motion in a world long since stilled. Tourists walk its shadow in quiet awe, tracing shallow grooves whose meaning is lost. The monument yields no artifact nor buried offering, only cryptic geometry and the subtle presence of water pooled in shallow, rectangular depressions. From each location, mysteries compound. There is the ancient granite block of Hyogo, the enigmatic stone vessel of Asuka, and half a world away, megalithic wonders in Peru and Turkey, standing as mute witnesses to their own unexplained origins. Throughout, the same motif persists. Vast effort expended in defiance of natural forces, often in places haunted by tales of flood and survival. As the narrative steps back from stone and shadow, a note of speculation arises. There are those quiet voices, sometimes dismissed, who speak of a single, world-spanning civilization existing before the last great deluge. In their view, scattered megaliths may be the submerged fingerprints of a lost people, erased by an inundation that left only legend and impossible architecture in its wake. The silence between stones becomes, for them, a form of testimony, as if the true story is partially buried beneath centuries of alluvial drift. At this turn, another detail sharpens the sense of oddity. While most mainstream accounts date a great flood to some 4,000 years ago, overlapping with memories of Sumer and the biblical account, a striking number of legends cluster further back, between 12 and 8,000 years before present. Aligning with the moment the last ice age ended, it is in this twilight of deep prehistory that the world's water began to rise, where forests drowned, lowlands transformed, and the places now lost to ocean became the stuff of mythic recall. The die-off and rebuilding cycles described by ancient cultures begin to make sense, as if disaster and recovery are somehow hardwired into the very narrative of humanity. Even today, as sonar and submersibles trace the outlines of forgotten settlements beneath the waves, roads traced in silt, terraces crumbling under marine growth, the mind begins to drift. What sorts of lives unfolded here before the water surged in and hallowed the ruins in perpetual silence? The echo of lapping waves along a submerged city wall conjures images of ancient rituals, hurried departures, and the weight of knowing that nothing stands forever. Among all these ruins, a singular thread emerges, the reverberating silence that cloaks every stone, the echo of water, the chill of wind over monoliths. And out of this silence, the oldest myths murmur, of worlds undone and wrecked, of builders whose memory survives only where the flood could not erase the trace of their hands. Some might wonder, are these scattered echoes coincidence, or the persistent shadow of a truth lost beneath the ages? In the stillness, the question lingers, inseparable from the wind and the stones themselves. In a faint thread winding through archaeology and legend, some researchers imagine a lost culture, builders of megaliths, swept away by a cataclysm that erased their record and scattered echoes in stone. Low clouds embrace the silent fields around Stonehenge, the dawn chill settling into the massive sarsen stones, as if the air itself seeks answers. There is something unyielding about the monument, neither monumental nor ruin, simply a presence, a gathering of weight and stillness, with the hush of dew, softened grass stretching out in all directions. Wind teases at the gaps between each megalith, its breath carrying questions as old as the stones. No chisel marks in sight, no inscriptions left behind, only the enduring enigma of who summoned these stones and why. The world seems suspended in the reverberating silence that surrounds abandoned stonework, history itself holding its breath. Across an ocean and centuries, the monumental scale persists. At Sacsayhuaman, high above Cusco, Cyclopean walls once guarded an ancient stronghold. The vast blocks here dwarf the onlookers, each fitted together with improbable precision. Some stones boast a dozen angles, each surface cut and nested into its neighbors like a titanic, three-dimensional puzzle, with seams so tight that blades of grass struggle to find purchase. The coldness radiating from the stones merges with the sharp mountain air. In these early hours, mist weaves between the walls, occasionally breaking to reveal a solitary figure tracing the boundary. Locals once whispered that only giants or wielders of lost magic could have moved such stones, each block heavy beyond imagining. There is no chronicled architect, no recorded procession or commemoration carved into the ramparts. The record is simply absent. Yet the technique endures, repeated as far away as the wind-swept ridges of the British Isles, the sun-baked plains beneath Giza's pyramids, and the overgrown islands that dot the Pacific Rim. These patterns in stone hint at a memory scattered across latitude and epoch, as though an ancient intelligence had once seeded the world's corners before vanishing under the weight of catastrophe. Pattern interrupts, emerge like footprints left by a receding tide. Off the coast of Japan, another anomaly waits beneath the lilt of passing waves. Here, submerged and battered by constant currents, the Ishinahoden stone lies with its colossal dimensions mostly revealed, a granite guardian whose purpose is obscured by time. It is vast by any standard, over 6 meters in length, nearly as broad, and monstrous in its height. Divers note the play of cold, greenish light on its eroded surface, the way barnacles cluster along edges that once may have been sharp and intentional. Above, the ocean laps at shallow beaches where local shrine keepers still speak of heaven-ordained stones and sunken lands. Step further into Japan's mythic past, and the Kojiki whispers of divine tempests and world-changing floods, sent by vengeful gods determined to shape or erase the land. Here, myth and megalithic reality entwine, braiding fact with legend until it becomes impossible to say where memory ends and imagination takes over. A question lingers in every gust across these sites, every ripple reflected in a submerged monolith. Who first moved these stones? Silence is the only voice upon the wind. Yet, when examined as a chain rather than separate curiosities, a startling suggestion arises. Massive monuments, often predating local writing, are distributed too widely to be mere coincidence. Their builders' names are gone. Their techniques, in many cases, remain irreproducible with known tools. Only the stones themselves persist, mute and resilient, their mass an implicit defiance to the slow grind of time. The investigative journey circles back to Peru, where Sacsayhuaman's wall runs smooth, as if the very rock once flowed. Underneath sharp Andean sunlight, every joint demands study. Some have speculated about lost techniques or tools, but the walls do not disclose secrets easily. When the late afternoon light strikes at a slant, it draws out subtle undulations in the blocks, and the puzzle-like complexity becomes tangible. 12 angled corners at a time, impossible to slide apart or fit together without a guiding vision now lost. A slow intensification builds with each new site introduced. When attention turns to Giza, it is not merely the scale of the pyramids that stuns, but the strict adherence to alignment, the mathematical sophistication embedded in stone. Egypt's dry air swirls dust along the ancient pathways, and silence deepens within the shadow of a structure so old that even later Egyptians regarded the monuments as ancient, even in their own times. These monuments share not only ambition, but also absence. The lack of narrative, the missing signatures of history's hand. The world's earliest stones enclose us in the echo of absent chronicles, hinting at a unifying disaster. Around the world, folklore and legend pulse with stories of floods. Across Mexico, Suma, and even the Pacific archipelagos, the motif persists. Waters rise, a consequence of divine anger, or perhaps the memory of something far more physical and devastating. In the salt-tinged air over submerged ruins, quiet reigns. A diver's heartbeat accelerates as new features emerge from the murk, squared recesses, platforms, stairs passing into shadow, or mute beneath green water. The stones glow eerily in shafts of dappled light, as if trying to reveal their purpose. Each expedition uncovers more questions than answers. Local legends, half remembered by fishermen or shrine keepers, suggest that what lies beneath is not merely a quirk of nature, but the remnant of something slaughtered by water and time. As the sun falls behind Stonehenge, shadows lengthen, and stones become silhouettes, silent witnesses to a world transformed. The memory of the Great Flood is never far removed from these settings, carried in myth as often as in the ruined remnants of lost architecture. The reverberating silence that hangs over these places is not only physical, but almost spiritual, as though each stone waits for a story that will never be spoken aloud. Journeying from continent to continent, a thread emerges. Immense stones, cut and placed with inexplicable skill. Legends of violence in the sky and water, and a void in the record where civilization's story should be. Sometimes, standing at the boundary between land and sea, or tracing a fingertip along a block fitted centuries ago, the sense of absence is overwhelming. What calamity could have scattered builders and blueprint alike so completely that even memory is carved in whispers and not words? And still, the puzzle endures. From the cyclopean walls of Peru to monoliths slipping beneath foreign surf, an unbroken pattern of mastery survives in stone. Pale sunlight spills across a deserted Andean plateau, catching for a moment on stone faces so smooth and daunting that even centuries of mountain storms have not erased their intent. In the sacred valley of Peru, beneath a thin veil of drifting cloud, the ancient stones of Ollantaytambo command the landscape, a living riddle cut from the mountain's core. At its heart lies the wall of the 6 monoliths, 6 immense stone slabs, each weighing many tons, locked in silent formation with a precision that taunts the ages. Local myth spins tales of giants and vanished artisans, but against the cold reality of stone, these stories remain half-shadows, unsettled and indistinct. Step closer, and each block bears the scars of labor, strange, tight-fitting joints, and minute, deliberate grooves whose purpose is lost. The touch of wind here is surprisingly loud, pressing through the high passes and curling between megaliths, carrying the scent of granite and ancient dust. There is a hush around the site, a reverberating silence that seems to deepen when you pause. For all the knowledge amassed by visitors and scholars, questions multiply like reflections in polished surfaces. The very style of construction, massive blocks handled as if weightless, joined with a finesse now rare, echoes across continents, as if ancient minds had whispered secrets between distant lands. The journey of inquiry leans eastward, over the Pacific and into a forested rise in Japan, where another enigma waits in stony patience. Masuda. No Iwafune, a colossal megalith perched awkwardly on a grassy hill, seems deliberately positioned as if meant to be noticed by some long-lost audience. Its top, shaped into sharp geometric angles and odd rectangular cutouts, rejects every obvious function. No one knows if it's signaled, marked, or sanctified. To stand before it is to feel the weight of intent behind the design, with each inch challenging onlookers to assign meaning. Every explanation offered, even those with supernatural flavor, inevitably falls shy. Only the questions endure. What is undeniable is the sense of kinship in craft, a subtle rhythm carried in stone from Andean terraces to Japanese foothills. Engineers in both places mastered manipulation of scale, teasing the limits of what their neighbors considered possible, whether split by iron or patience. These stones were made to last, asserting their presence long after their builders disappeared. As the script of civilization sprawls outward, skipping across oceans and centuries, another pattern emerges. Far from these highlands and hills, submerged beneath restless Mediterranean waters, lie the shadowy outlines of forgotten ambitions. Just off the Syrian coast, divers sometimes speak of stony avenues winding out across the seabed, blocks as immense as those standing in Peruvian valleys, now claimed by tides and silt. Some of these structures rise in stacked courses, others remain scattered and half buried, touched only by the slow advance of marine life. There is a hush here, too, punctuated by the distant sound of waves and the creak of submerged beams. It is as if the sea itself has been tasked with keeping secrets, preserving ambitions long since drowned. Such echoes persist, stones fitted together without mortar, faces smoothed by skill or shifted by catastrophe, enigmatic marks repeating like a half-remembered refrain. Around the globe, evidence accumulates, not as a single smoking gun, but as a litany of coincidences, convergences, and contradictions. In Peru, local folklore insists the builders were not ordinary people, but something more, giants, demigods, or even survivors of an older world swept away by water. In Japan, ancient tales speak of stones endowed with spirit, sacred relics of an age before the known world. Meanwhile, along the drowned coasts, myth and history tangle in stories of deluge, lost cities, and the moment when ordinary lands slipped beneath the waves. All share, if not direct connection, then at least a unity of mystery, the relentless sense that something essential has been lost between the stones. Time and water. These are the ancient sculptors, erasing memory, but leaving puzzles too large for easy explanation. Twilight deepens in the sacred valley. The stones of Ollantaytambo absorb the last rays, their surfaces blowing softly, while night wind begins its quiet reign. The wall of the 6 monoliths looms, unchanged. Through the twilight, a single truth persists. One civilization after another has tried to decode this global cipher, mapping myth onto stone, legend onto submerged ruin. Yet the answer never quite arrives. Instead, the evidence expands, each new find layering uncertainty atop the next. Out among the trembling kelp beds where Syria meets the sea, the shapes of underwater monoliths are briefly revealed in the shifting light. A silent reminder that the ocean, too, keeps its own counsel. The sound of water pressing against sunken foundations echoes the wind on sacred hills, compass points in a mystery whose contours only grow as each piece is found. Was there a great deluge, a cataclysm that swept away civilizations more complex than once believed? Are these patterns nothing more than the insistent handiwork of converging needs, people far apart, but wrestling with the same problems, and the answers surfacing again and again in stone? The viewer is left here, at the edge of certainty, with stories that resist simplification and evidence too tangible to ignore. Now, the world falls quiet again, water brushing against the broken feet of stones, wind tracing ancient lines. From Japan's deserted shrines to the silent arches of Andean walls, the stones endure. A chorus of silences, their secrets folded into the world's memory. No chronicle answers for them. No legend fully resolves their origins. In their endurance lies the greatest mystery, that even as civilizations rise and vanish, the stones remain, listening to the ceaseless song of water and time. In the faint glow of dawn, beside the shoreline at Yonaguni, the shifting tide laps a geometric staircase cut from submerged sandstone. Here, the ocean carries soft echoes, the rhythmic hush and rush, as if it too remembers an era when land ruled, where water now claims sovereignty. Divers glide overhead, small and transient, tracing crisp right angles beneath the waves. The hush that follows their motions feels dense, pressure-laden, charged with further questions. Is this truly the work of human hands, or something shaped by the currents and patience of millennia? What remains certain is the stone's defiance, its refusal to dissolve even after ages underwater. Above ground, the Ishinohoden monument cloaks itself in mystery amid the woods of Hyogo Prefecture. Rain polishes its vast sloping form. The weight, almost unthinkable, estimated at nearly 500 tons. Moss scales its flanks in delicate green patterns, and tree roots thread around its base, holding ancient earth and story together. A local tale persists that the gods themselves once placed this stone in the time before disaster as a boundary marker or vessel. Striking the surface with one's knuckles sends vibrations through the misty morning, solid, immense, but oddly sonorous. The legend lingers, mingling with the sensation of magnitude and the certainty that no two marks reveal its age or purpose. A slow journey west brings the scene to South America, where the wall of the 6 monoliths towers over the Peruvian dusk. Each block looms higher than a man, weighing as much as 50 tons. Black feathered birds circle in absolute silence. The stones fit so tightly, not even a blade of grass will slip between them, yet no mortar binds their massive forms. The Andean wind claws at the wall's face, weaving its own song around those immense sentinels. Was this more than architecture, a shield against disaster, or simply a statement of sovereignty? Local oral histories speak of giant floodwaters, a world washed clean before the sun returned. Yet the stonework resists both explanation and erosion. Its very existence, a counter-argument not only to time, but to the unpredictability of fate. In each region, people pass down stories edged by memory and myth. Along the coastlines of Australia, old voices recount how the rising seas split their lands, isolating families and reshaping ancestral territories. At twilight, smoke from fires winds upward, carrying songlines that map lost scenes. A mountain now submerged, a valley now filled with brine. These tales sound neither boastful nor sorrowful. Rather, they inhabit the steady hush between tradition and warning. Some researchers now scrutinize these stories, wondering if they preserve echoes of real cataclysm. Here, the narrative deepens, linking stones across distances and across ages. Within Japan's earliest written records, like the Kojiki from 712 AD, the lines blur between the divine and the tangible world. The text describes a time of chaos and watery rebirth, where gods lifted or placed stones to shape and shield the archipelago. In the Andean highlands, stonework is said to reflect the deeds of Viracocha, who is credited with bringing order after a world-drowning deluge. The same motif reappears around globe-spanning mythologies, creation through water, restoration through stone. These motifs are mirrored in the archaeological record, the stones seeming to serve as both shelter and memory. Even today, the gaps between engineered perfection and natural wonder remain profound. Structures that resist dating, markers aligned to lost horizons, and sunken remnants that match no modern maps, all suggest the footprints of civilizations forced to grapple with nature's upheavals. On a wind-swept plain near the South American ruins, the surface trembles with a low thrumming. Perhaps a distant train, perhaps just the wind, but in imagination a memory of something vaster. Each stone seems to transmit accumulated silence, as if it still listens for the return of the flood. Layer by layer, patterns reveal themselves. Stones recur with uncanny frequency near ancient shorelines. Their arrangements hint at calendars, at refuges, at warnings no longer legible. Investigators pass grooves worn by unknown hands, analyze the mineral dust embedded in underwater ruins, measure the weight of monoliths with instruments more advanced than their presumed builders. Yet for all their efforts, an elemental silence persists, felt most sharply in the gentle clatter of waves or the faint thunder of earth underfoot. Moments arrive when the modern mind reels at the implications. If, as it appears, ancient peoples were forced to react to environmental catastrophe, then legend and architecture meet at a crossroads, crossing over submerged plazas in Japan or walking the divided plains of Australia. One senses not merely the weight of stone, but the immense tension between loss and endurance. In these layers of narrative and engineering, traces of an older, nearly vanished language stir, the tongue of cataclysm and of recovery. It is tempting to seek a single answer, to hope a final parchment or artifact will resolve the discord between myth and science. And yet, as viewers look upon the great stones, weathered, water-worn, unyielding, a different lesson whispers through the hush. These monuments, left by hands whose identities blur, remind us that uncertainty is not an absence. The stones are not failures to understand, but invitations to listen, not puzzles to be conquered, but memories inscribed in granite and silence. Across hemispheres, the same reverberating quiet falls, the drip of water in forgotten halls, cicadas tuning their song in the shade of megaliths, a wind rising through corridors of carved rock. The human story is more than yesterday's record. It is a palimpsest in which stones endure, while names flicker and cultures change course. In this final reflection, each viewer stands with the ancient builders, beside the stones, under the weight of a twilight sky. The great flood, whether literal or figurative, marks the borderland between forgetting and remembering. But the stones, whether scattered beneath the Japanese surf or watching over the Andean night, persist. They remind us that the greatest mysteries are not erased by time or washed away by disaster. Instead, they endure, silent, watchful, anchoring our imagination to a deep and unbroken past.